Hey, happy Degen Wednesday. We are back. Another episode of Go FUD Yourself and a familiar face joining us today. Mr. Bolin, how you doing?
Doing well. Even better, you can see my face today.
So good that the mailman showed up with the dogs.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Don't be. It's all good. I've got a few of those running around too. And anybody that watches the pod with any regularity knows that it's a live show, Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. And you can tell that because almost always I have a kid come in or a dog barks or something's going on. So it's all good. Anyways, sorry?
It's the beauty of doing it live.
That's right. Live is the answer. Hey, so just quick kind of high level, what is DeFi Kingdoms for the people that must have been living under a rock and don't know? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, so DeFi Kingdoms is a full Web3 protocol that is also building an RPG on top of said Web3 protocol, but integrating all of those aspects into the RPG. So our NFTs are how you play the game. We have a DEX, we have liquidity pools, but you actually interact with those liquidity pools with your hero NFTs as part of the game. So everything is gamified, and building that really fun gaming experience is our first priority. And then using the platform as a way to introduce gamers to Web3 at their own pace. So they'll be using these Web3 elements, but they won't necessarily have to learn about them until they're ready to. We just recently released our combat system, or our first combat experience within our combat system. There will be so much more to come on that front. But yeah, that's what we're up to these days.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. I mean, in terms of what we're talking about today, I couldn't think of a better person to have on and chat about this. Just for anybody just tuning in, the topics we're going to cover today: Web3 gaming, imagine Web3 in New York City. We're going to talk a little bit about Spindle and Apps Flyer. It's pretty much all gaming today. Analytics for gaming, NFTs, play to earn. Is that a real thing? Is it sustainable? Are we going to keep trying it? And I guess we're going to end on a note: Web3 games in 2024. And I can't think of too many better people than yourself and your colleagues to give us some insight on that. So we will knock it out. Shout out to our friends at Tashi. Hilarious that I don't wear the merch when Tashi's on the pod, but shout out to our merch sponsor today, which is Tashi. Like, share, subscribe, help us get the word out. And with that, let's freaking go. All right. Hey, did you see the markets the last couple of days?
Yeah, I did.
I think your hat is a little bit relevant. Finally,
Yeah.
I've seen that hat many times. Today is one of the first days that I can confidently say I feel you.
Why we stay bullish. It's all a matter of time.
Eventually, if you're bullish long enough, you'll be right. Kind of like that broken clock twice a day. Anyway, all right. So let's just jump right into it. So this headline is interesting, of course, and we talk a lot about headlines and how sometimes they can be a little bit misleading and a little bit of hyperbole. Anyways, to set this one up, and Bolin, I'm sure you have tons of thoughts on this, so I'll set it up quick and then we'll pass it off to you. But so there was a CoinGecko report that came out that had what they consider to be a shocking statistic that says only 80% or not only, a total of 80%, oh my goodness, of Web3 games projects fail in the first year, which sounds alarming until you take one further step back. And by most estimates, it's mid 90% failure rate for startups in general globally in the first year. So my response to this is shit. Web3 gaming is doing pretty good, but there was a lot of other kind of color in there in terms of success and so on. Active player base, a bunch of them just stopped operating, but a few of them have remained active. I think in Web3, we can keep our overhead substantially lower than many other things. So I think that's probably why we're seeing some struggling games stay alive. Anyways, what are your thoughts, man? Like, I mean, obviously you guys are deep in the gaming space, but kind of what's your impression? I think there's been a lot of assumptions that were incorrect, that we're going to have AAA games built entirely on chain, including the game engines like today. Right. That's not happening. So what are your thoughts? What are you seeing? What are the trends? Is Web3 gaming in a crisis right now?
Yeah, I mean, I do find that 80% shocking that we're doing that much better than Web2 gaming. Yeah. Because, you know, you're 100% right. Like, it's in the mid 90s for just startups in general, but in Web2 games, it's also in the mid 90s for games that fail. You know, like, we talk about AAA games all the time, right? Because they're the standard. They're also the ones that succeed. You know, most indie games don't. Like, that's just the way that it goes, right? And that's where you have stuff like Steam, where these indie developers are trying to get their game out there and trying to get recognized. And that's great. Like, I'm not trying to hate on them by any means. Like, obviously, you know, we're all in that same boat.
Right.
But 90-something% of them fail. So it's like, you know, okay, so by 80% metrics, we're doing better than Web2 gaming. That's great news. And again, as you said with the startups, like, you have to look at the broader spectrum than that, right? Like, that's a very attention-grabbing metric, but with no context means nothing. And there's so many ways that you can look at that. You can compare it to Web2 gaming. You can compare it to startups. You can also compare it to just general Web3. You know, how many Web3 projects fail in the first year? I don't know that statistic off my head, but I would bet it's also a majority of them fail in the first year. You know, I can think of a pretty good number of them, especially in these last couple of years where the market has been so unforgiving. You know, it's a hard time to launch.
It's a hard time to maintain, right?
Yeah, it's hard to live. But you know, especially, and then so in terms of your other point of there's, you know, a larger portion, I think, of games that are technically active, even if they are not necessarily under development. I think a lot of that actually shows the merit of the blockchain, because realistically, if, you know, we build this platform, right, and like, DFK is a little bit different because we've taken some stuff to extremes. But if you build just like a pretty basic Web3 game, right? You have NFTs, those NFTs do something for your game, and that's about it. Your overhead is next to nothing. But also, you know, there's parts of that you really can't shut down. Like, you can't delete the NFTs or anything like that. So even if you say like, hey, you know, the gaming engine's costing, you know, $500 a month to run, and I'm not willing to do it anymore, it's very, very possible that your community does. That someone else says, hey, I'll take it on and pay the $500 a month to keep it alive. Like, it's a lot easier for that transition to happen. And we've seen that with some different platforms where they've had complete and total, you know, leadership changes. You know, one that comes to mind is Stars Arena. You know, had a total leadership change entirely. But it's the same project, it's the same platform, but other people came in and said, we want to keep this alive. We want to try to, you know, improve it. And that's something that's a lot more possible in Web3 than in Web2. Because you're not like selling them your company, right? This is a very clickbaity headline, in my opinion. But
there is a figure that I'll quote from there that is somewhat concerning, and I think this isn't so much a testament to the potential of the space, but rather to the inexperience of capital deployers. But $2 billion in GameFi funding in 2022, that's a lot of money.
I am curious though, how much of that $2 billion has gone into games that have even launched yet? Because that is a new trend that we're seeing, which I don't think is a bad thing. So you have people like ourselves, we launched to fund the development of the game, right? And we are starting to see more of a shift to, you know, getting funding pre-launch, building the game pre-launch, and then launching. So how much of that money has even seen the product yet? And I am curious as to what that split is, but I definitely think there are games that have, you know, raised capital and done nothing with it for sure.
Well, I think I think like time to delivery for a AAA game or like high quality is 3 to 5 years, and
Easily.
20 to 100 million.
Yeah.
So I mean, to build that kind of quality, we need some time. So one thing I think is interesting and maybe worth discussing here is I believe there needs to be more separation between Web3 gaming and GameFi. Often they're conflated. Often they're conflated as the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot easier for people to understand, protocols to understand, gaming developers to understand, adding GameFi first before you try to Web3 game the whole fucking thing. And so what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that we as a space need to do more to help people understand the difference of terms, or is that just semantics that don't really matter, and what really matters is users?
No, I think it matters exponentially, but I think that we also need to just start calling it gaming. Like we're just playing games. Like, yes, there are financial aspects to them, and that is fine, but there's financial aspects to basically every game you play, because you paid for the game. You may be paying for DLCs. You may be paying for in-game content. Like, this isn't some new concept that there's transactions. So first and foremost, I think we need to stop separating it and just talk about it as gaming, which is what it truly is. That said, for those that actually know the space and understand and want more detail, yes, I think there's a difference between GameFi and Web3 gaming, and I do think that we need to do a better job of differentiating. Again, just to use us as an example, because I'm obviously familiar, really, we started out as GameFi. We were gamified finance. That's what we were. We were gamified DEX, gamified LPs. That was about it. Post-launch, as was always our plan, we are transitioning to be Web3 gaming, building out this entire RPG experience on top of it. But first and foremost, we are a game. And that's what 90% of people need to know, is that we're a game. The Web3, the FI, none of that matters. For that 10%, though, I do think there is a lot of benefit of being specific and being accurate. But real quick on the topic of games going under, I just remembered, and it kind of made me chuckle. So I was going to throw it out there real quick. I was at ETH Denver, and our partners at Supra Oracles were doing a side event called the Gamer Event. And so, they asked us to speak. We were like, yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun. It was a great event. But I was on a panel, and at the end, we took some questions from the audience. And one of the questions was something along the lines of like, what would you say to developers in order to make their game last past the 30 days? Or the first 30 days. Yeah. And my response was, don't launch a project that you can't fund for more than the first 30 days. Like, if you're launching with the intention of, we have to receive funding within the first 30 days to be able to keep developing or keep it alive,
not gonna happen.
Don't launch. Like, you need to secure more funding than that.
Yeah.
I mentioned before, like we launched to fund the development of the game. Yes, but there wasn't like all of us when we launched, which I came in like 5 weeks later, but same thing. Like, we were working for free. Like, this was a passion project. Like, this wasn't, if we don't get income, we're done. Like, that's not, if you're launching with that mentality, you're launching with the wrong mentality anyway. But that extends into every business. Right. If you open any business and you are dependent on revenue in the first 30 days, I got bad news for you.
Yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle, that's for sure. I think there's a lot of parallels here with gaming and DeFi finance. Yeah. I, for as long as I can remember, have really tried to shape the discussion around DeFi as rather being blockchain-enabled finance. Mm-hmm. The reason that I'm so adamant on that is because anytime that we think we're going to see societal change that is going to be drastic and in one foul swoop, it's either a massive failure or a massive pipe dream. It never. We don't go from this way of doing things to a wholesale change of this way, societally and globally, all at once. Yeah. So same thing with TradFi. It's on us versus traditional finance.
No, it shouldn't be.
No, we're technologists that are building new potentiality for financial products and for financial institutions to continue to explore. And
well, somebody is the traditionalist in every phase of development of anything. You know, we don't call them trad games. Like we like there isn't some war, and there shouldn't be with finance too, because realistically, we need those people.
Well, and it's a spectrum, right? So when we look at, we've seen some of the quasi CeFi institutions starting to move to on-chain enablement. Base, Kraken with the announcement of their permissioned L2, Onyx, which is like the Goldman, JP Morgan, Microsoft thing. I mean, we're seeing more and more people more and more institutions start to participate, but they're not saying, okay, it's either our old business model or this new one. They're saying, hey, we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater here, but this should make things better. And there's a spectrum of adoption. I think the same thing for gaming, especially with platforms like Immutable and others that really help with the building blocks, which is really cool. All of that to say, I think, there's a lot of excitement around gaming. I have one more question before we move on to some of these highly curated events in New York City. But do you think in 2022, a lot of the narrative on Twitter or X and everywhere else was that most gamers shudder at hearing Web3 because they were probably scammed or ripped off, or somehow they felt that there was a disservice done to them. Do you think that that's actually that we see that enough that it's a real problem, or is it just the really vocal minority in that case? What are your thoughts on that one?
So I do think that there's a largely vocal minority. However, I will also say I think that there is a not misconception, but a bad taste driven by a handful of bad actors that is, well, they're just going to shove NFTs in my face to get my money. Which unfortunately is the thing that has happened, right? If you're like,
but that's like saying Walmart's going to shove groceries in your face to take your money,
right? And so that's the thing is like there are gamers that hear NFT and go, well, you're just trying to get my money. What they don't realize is that this is the same thing that you're already potentially paying for. Like,
but now you have ultimate control,
right? Like if you play League of Legends and you buy skins, guess what? They already got you. That skin could be an NFT and now you own it and you can trade it and you can buy and sell it. And look at that. Great. Or maybe you can't. Maybe it's account bound. That's fine. It being an NFT has absolutely no bearing on anything.
Yeah.
But
that's the technology layer
right. Yeah. But there have been some games that have added NFTs as cash grabs.
Yeah.
And so that has created this kind of weird, like, misunderstanding of what the purpose of it is that I think education easily handles. I also think, treating things more as games instead of Web3 games, because realistically in DFK, you come in, you buy a hero to play the game. At no point does it matter that it's an NFT. So unless somebody's, throwing that out there, which obviously on this podcast, I mention it, this is a Web3 podcast, but for normal gamers, you just say, yeah, you go buy a hero and then they go buy a hero and play the game. It being an NFT doesn't have any bearing to them. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. It matters on our end because it means that they own it. They can trade it. They can, but yeah, there's this weird conflation with the technology and the tactics. And I think we'll continue to get past that, especially with things like account abstraction. Like the more that we start to be able to hide that blockchain layer, it's not malicious hiding. It's just hiding it because right now it's in the way. It's just like we want the technology and the services that it brings, but nobody wants to sign a MetaMask transaction all the time. It's annoying. And so the more that we go down that road, I think the easier it gets to cross that barrier for people.
Yeah, totally. Like I also think that again, a lot of users of gaming are in a demographic where they're used to having someone to blame if something goes wrong. And,
yes.
So I think all of this ultimate responsibility for private keys and accountability to your own security and all this stuff, to many of us, of course, society is better if the majority of society has that mentality.
Right. But they don't.
And
they're not going to.
And so we still have to kind of consider. Anyways, we can move on. I have tons of follow-up questions because that's such a cool concept.
It is. It's a great topic.
And I think we'll get a chance to jump back into it before the end of the pod. But let's move over to the Big Apple. So there's this sporting goods social event at the Raleigh Museum, and this is kind of interesting in a sense because during bull markets we see all these lavish, like highly curated events, and I've always kind of felt like some of them are a colossal waste of money because I feel like there's a lot of waste during bull markets.
Yeah.
The reason I like this article is because it's showing that even in a bear market, if you do it right, you can get a lot of traction and momentum.
Yep.
But the key here isn't just throwing a big free party and hoping people show up. This is a very curated event. Are you familiar with this at all?
Not that particular event. No, I actually missed that one.
Okay, so of course I missed it too, but there's an interesting digital agency, and I don't usually shout out individual vendors here, but it's a company called L+R, and they focus specifically on tokenization and real world assets for blockchain. And so they were able to get guys from NBA, PGA, NHL, all these places, which is kind of cool. Has DeFi Kingdoms done many curated events? I mean, I've attended a couple, but a couple smaller ones, but what's kind of your philosophy as a community manager on these types of events?
Yeah, so we have not put them on, but we have attended. I think events.
Do you have any DeFi Kingdoms branded events? I could have swore I've attended a few.
Well, yes and no. Like we've done like smaller like DFK side events, I guess, in fairness, but not like the whole shebang. Yeah. We haven't done any 3-day conferences, but yeah, we've done some side events and they've gone really well. I think that curated events are massively impactful. No one is flying across the country to go to your 4-hour open bar party. That is not why they are there. So like you're 100% right. In the bull market, there's so much waste. There always is. Okay, whatever, sure. Do your thing, I guess. But like that's not why anyone is there. It's just not. They're there for the event. They're there for the networking. They're there for the connections. They're there to learn about new technology, new projects, new games, new whatever. So I will say, like, we've done, ETH Denver for 2 years. We've done Decentral Miami twice. Obviously, we've done Avalanche Summit twice. We've been to Permissionless. We've been to Consensus. So we've been to a pretty good number of events. Right. Decentral Austin also, when they had it last year, that was a lot of fun. Some events are better than others. Just is what it is. And some events are better for certain things than others. And that's where, like, there are events that I've been to where we said, hey, it's in Florida. I'm in Florida. Me and my coworker in Florida are going to go to this event, and that's it. We're not doing a booth. We're not, we're going to take some merch to hand out, but we're not doing anything big because we want to see what this event is like and see if it is worth doing something bigger, right?
For next year.
And so curated events can be very impactful because you get in front of a lot of people. You get to see your partners. You get to meet new partners. You get to meet, potential investors. And so having a presence there and putting your best foot forward can be very, very impactful. But all of the after parties and all that, all they really are is an extension of the networking, and that can be done for a fraction of the cost of how most of them
you don't have to get everybody wasted at some fancy nice nightclub just to network.
And most of them aren't getting wasted. Your open bar is wasted because most of them are sipping on a couple drinks because they're there to work. Yeah. Like they're trying to network, build connections. They don't want to get drunk. And so like 3XP was another one that I unfortunately was not able to attend. I still have FOMO about it right now, but a couple of our team members were. It was super well put on from everything I've heard. It was gaming focused, which is awesome for us, obviously, but just incredibly well done. And that is more important than anything else.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that, and then we can move on. But in a previous life, I had a brand and marketing company, and we did a good amount of kind of adjacent events to some of the, I don't want to call it event planning because it wasn't that way. We had some people inside the company that were really good at it. My suggestion here is twofold. Number one, this is something that you should not do last second. Every time I've tried to do it last second, it's a freaking nightmare, and It's never worked out. You don't get the right attendees. It's a ton of stress. It costs you a ton of money.
6 months minimum.
Yeah, for sure.
Minimum.
Plan it properly so that you have time to source vendors and you have time to curate the attendees and make sure they can all come and they all know about it and whatever. The second thing is, unless your team has a sizable experienced marketing department, this is one of those things where there are expert vendors that actually make a difference, like a big difference. And so my advice here, find people that know what they're talking about if you're looking for support for this one. And lastly, doing an event like this immediately after you launch, similar to what you said, if you have to make money in the first 30 days, or if you're planning a $200,000 event in the first 30 days, probably need to do that.
Maybe attend an event. Don't have one.
Yeah. And if you have one, it's surely not going to be a massive one. But anyway, we digress slightly. Okay, let's move. I'm going to skip over that one. Let's talk about transforming analytics for blockchain games. Okay, I will admit my ignorance here. And anybody that knows me knows that gaming is not my area of any amount of expertise, really, other than I know how to waste money and not play very well.
Hey, have you got DeFi Kingdoms?
Yeah, well, that one's different. I can totally do DeFi Kingdoms, but analytics. So I know we've talked, very personally about analytics in terms of like the DeFi components of DeFi Kingdoms. What does analytics mean to the average person? Like, what does that even mean?
To the average person,
The average gamer.
Okay, to the average gamer, number of players, number of hours spent playing, locations of players, some of which does not apply to Web3, by the way. But I think that would, for the average gamer, be kind of their like main thoughts. It's like, how many people play this game? How many downloads does it have in, if it's a mobile game, that kind of thing. For Web3, I think it changes a little bit though.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get a couple quotes here from the article. I don't really understand why that would be difficult to get analytics like that. Like, I feel like that's pretty well established, like basic Google Analytics type stuff. Maybe I'm missing something. So there's a pretty cool Web2 gaming analytics apps flyer that is now moving into a partnership with Spindle, which is a Web3 analytics platform for gaming. I'm just a little unclear what the 0 to 1 is here. Did we have it? Was there a gap in Web3 gaming analytics? Like, have you guys struggled to?
So I don't think there's so much a gap. It's just things are a little bit different, and I think it throws off a lot of people and devs. But so first off, I will say I'm not particularly familiar with Spindle, so no offense to them, but I will give a shout out to Covalent, who does absolutely phenomenal analytics stuff. They're integrated with a lot of different chains, and then you can use their tools to make custom reports and do your own analytics, which is great. But like for example, how many people play DeFi Kingdoms? It's not really a question that I can answer.
100,000.
How many wallets interact? But I do not know how many players there are. Yeah. And so it's stuff like that I think it's not necessarily a gap. It's just a different form of understanding.
Yeah.
Because it is anonymous. If we had KYC accounts, then sure, I'd have a better idea of how many people are playing. But we don't want KYC accounts. So it's more so just that there's different metrics used, and I think a lot of people don't know how to process them necessarily because they're still getting used to them. So I openly tell people, we have our unique active wallet count, and then I assume I divide that by 3. I figure on average, player probably has 3 wallets.
Three wallets.
A lot with 1, and then it goes from there. And so you have to know how to kind of take those numbers and manipulate them a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But how playtime is another interesting one. We're browser based, so a lot of people, including myself, technically speaking, I'm at 24-hour playtime.
You're on all the bloody time.
I never close the tab. And so it's more so just about like understanding how to work with your data than not having access to the data. And I think that's the same thing in Web 2. Like people had to get used to how to work with that data. We just haven't, as an industry, figured out how to use that data yet.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to kind of bring it in for a landing here with a couple of potentially exciting things and maybe the great debate. And so
security?
No. Well, that's a big debate too. But the great debate when it comes to Web3 games, at least from my perspective, has been what's more important, monetization or fun? Are people playing these games because they're looking for something fun to do that happens to have a monetary component? Or are they playing these games because I heard last cycle there was some pretty crazy games that made a lot of people a lot of money. They're all pretty much dead because their economic models didn't make sense. But I guess that it's the age-old debate. Gala Games is coming out with their piece. Gala Games is a Web3 gaming company, relatively well-known, has had a couple of good titles as far as I understand that have been adopted nicely. And now they're coming out with a new game called Legacy, which is all about fun and creativity. What are your thoughts? Have you heard of Legacy?
Very, very, very little. So I won't pretend to be too familiar with it. I think if you look at the audience that we have right now, it's probably a pretty even split between those that are focused on the monetization and those that are focused on having fun.
Right.
That said, if you look at a lot of the games that are available, they focus on monetization, so it kind of skews that audience, right? But if you look at the audience that we're trying to bring in, the gaming audience, fun is the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
If it's not fun, they're out already. Now you look at the monetization and say, if they're, more or less breaking even or profitable, great. If they're losing a little bit, maybe they're staying. If they're losing a lot, they probably aren't staying because, it's not that it's irrelevant, but fun definitely comes first. And I do think that we're seeing more and more of that shift. Gala's doing this. You've got, games that are focused on games like Shrapnel that are first-person shooters. You've got games that are really being built with fun first, and I think
in mind,
to see.
Yeah, I think obviously the thing about attracting people based on monetary incentives alone is that you have to maintain them because they didn't come for any reason other than opportunity, and we have that challenge in DeFi with liquidity mining and all of these emissions that I'm constantly going on about because it's not sustainable. We need a better way. Unfortunately, it's table stakes at the moment, but the users aren't sticky. You don't build evangelists by that alone.
No.
And I would think in gaming, it's the same thing. You look at some of the most successful games of all time, Roblox, obviously is a fairly big one. Minecraft, another one. What's that? Fortnite.
Yeah.
They're all creative and fun focused.
Yeah.
All of them. And there's a whole parallel economy for creators and this whole thing. And I was at an event where one of the founders of Roblox was there, and he was presenting, talking about the real key to their success has been they have an army of people literally contributing to the betterment of the game.
Yeah.
Most of which are doing for free. Which is insane, or for very little compensation, especially relative to an employee.
Right.
And now you have these evangelists. These people are committed once they've built something in the game. Advice for new people considering entering the space, building a project, you would say focus on fun?
Focus on fun and focus on your community.
Yeah.
Your community is the greatest tool that you have, the best marketing that you could have, content creating. If you build a good community, they will grow your community.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a little excited about the first few articles because we're going to have to skip over a few of the other ones we had planned today. But don't worry, we'll come back to them probably tomorrow, maybe. Kiara's not here, so I don't know if we're doing crypto arms race tomorrow or what. But anyways, let's end it on this. Predictions for 24 with respect to gaming. What are your thoughts? Do you think 24 is going to be a big year? And if so, what do you think is going to be the catalyst?
Yeah, I mean, gaming definitely seems to be leading the crypto narrative right now, which is awesome to see because, like, yeah, I work for a game, but I think that we're at a point where we want Web3 adoption, we want blockchain adoption, we want to get to the masses, right?
Yeah.
There's only so many ways that you can get to the masses, and saying, hey, come, 100x your money or lose it all. We'll see what happens isn't getting us to the masses.
No.
We've reached a point where we've kind of started, in my opinion, stagnating a little bit in terms of like getting new people into Web3 in general, not any particular project or anything, just into the overall space. And one of the ways that we can break into the masses is through gaming. The gaming sector is a massive percentage of the population. It's people who are already used to, spending money to play games. Like, that's nothing out of the ordinary for them. And so having a way to have those players say, hey, this looks like a fun game, I'm going to go play it. Oh, cool, this game is fun. Oh, shit, it's Web3. I'm going to learn more about that. Like, I think that is a massive way that we can reach some adoption, get in front of people, but it is absolutely fun first, because that's what brings people in.
Yeah, we saw the play to earns, Axie, et cetera. They were awesome. People were printing money. It was changing the economy in places like the Philippines.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the economic model wasn't sustainable.
No, it only works as long as there's still money coming in.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate Ponzi. It wasn't a Ponzi by that definition.
No, but yeah. But there are ways for people to earn while playing, just not if that's the focus has to be
not the primary motivation, right?
And that's one thing that, like, we've talked about with our community a lot of times, right? Is, they'll look at a mechanic and be like, that feels a little bit pay to win. And it's like, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, and that's fine. But one thing that's different in most Web3 games, definitely ours, but I think the vast majority, anything that is pay to win, you're not paying us. You're paying other players.
Yeah.
If you want to come in today and just say, I'm going to spend enough money to own the best heroes in the game, the best equipment in the game, and I'm just going to, ruffle stomp everybody. Cool. You're going to buy them from players who have spent their time and money building them. Yeah. You're not buying them from us. And that's a shift in mentality that I think will be very, very crucial for people to understand, is that pay to win is currently kind of a negative term because you're paying the game studio. And that's just not the case in most instances in Web3. You're paying other individuals within the ecosystem. You're boosting that economy.
That's an important distinction. I think, people, like, every game I've ever played, which is a limited selection, by the way, but almost all of them are pay to play.
Right.
Or at least you could free to play, but it wouldn't be fun. And so, I mean, you look at the tens or hundreds of millions of people that some of these games have, even though they're pay to win, pardon me. That's not necessarily a deterrent. That's actually what a lot of people expect. Here's what I think. I'm going to build on your response just quickly. I think the one thing that we need to do for Web3 gaming as a space in 24 is stop talking about Web3.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you said. But I've been talking about this for the space in totality. I think Web3 has just had a negative name because we saw it in so many of these negative headlines.
Scams, company crashing. Well, people don't know what it is. People are scared of things that they don't know. It is what it is. It's human nature. Just call it a game.
We're building a new game. It's an online game, whatever. It's a mobile game, whatever. It's a browser-based
game. Start playing this game.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. I think that's simple is almost always better.
Yes.
Less is almost always more.
Yep.
Especially when it comes to like this type of thing. So anyways, Bullen, it's been a pleasure, brother, as always. If people want to check you out, producers will put the links to your Twitter, DeFi Kingdom's Twitter, and probably Discord or something underneath the videos. Appreciate you, brother. Excited to have you back next time.
Thank you.
And reminder to everybody, we're a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. East. If you're not bored stiff from this conversation and you're still watching, please like, share, subscribe. Press press the bell, do all that shit for us so we can get our reach. Bolin, any final thoughts before we end?
Appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure, and looking forward to next time.
Appreciate it, brother. With that, I say to you and everybody else today, go FUD yourself.